Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you guys. Today we're going to be revisiting a deck that I am personally a huge fan of. It's a little bit divisive what some people think about this deck, but I am very much a fan of good old Phantom Knights here, and I wanted to come back to this deck because I didn't quite leave super satisfied with where our build was at the when we reviewed the deck last season, because I really wanted to add Crossout Designators. Very, very important to have this card, especially in decks like this, and especially in this format, you know. Before Swordsoul came out, you could kind of get away without Crossout Designator in this deck, and a lot of other decks too, but now that we're starting to see a format where Crossout is a lot more prevalent, and a lot more variety of answers are being used, and in turn then played into decks, then we are now we are now at a place where we are needing to put Crossout in more combo-based decks. And it's also very likely that we should have just been playing Crossout Designators before as well. But now the format has more or less pushed us to this point. So the other thing that I wanted to add too was a copy of Nibiru, right? Because if you remember the last build, we didn't have Nibiru either. And if I'm going to be playing Crossout, we definitely need to be playing a Nibiru. I would have really liked to be playing an Imperm to hit that with Crossout as well, but that I really just not have the room for. You can see I actually went up to 41 cards in this deck, which I kind of wondered if this was going to happen now that Swordsoul Tenyi has kind of like pushed that barrier for me of being willing to go over 40 for one deck. Now I'm willing to try it for another deck as well here with good old Phantom Knights. And the main reason though I went to 41 is just that I really needed the Nibiru as a Crossout Designator target and just a good card in general, but I just did not have the space for it. I scoured for a card to take out. The closest thing I could think of to take out would be one of the tour guides, right? But I really like having 3 tour guides. Because this is like a 1-card combo, it's just so good. It's pretty easily stopped as far as hand traps go, but that's also what the Crossout Designator is for, right? So if you really had to cut down to 40 with this build, probably just go ahead and drop a tour guide, especially if you don't have a 3 or don't want to craft 3. You could easily get away with 2. But yeah, I just wanted the 41st card, or you could also just not play Scythe, like the artifact stuff. That is definitely a little, I don't want to call it win more, because it is actually just genuinely a good engine, but it doesn't super duper, it doesn't like come up super duper often is what I'm getting at here. So that is another option that you could drop there. So what I actually ended up taking out of the deck for the 2 Crossout Designators were our 2 copies of Danger Jackalope. Just as far as our extenders go, it just kind of was, I don't want to call it the worst one, but it's really susceptible to hand traps, in particular Ash. Just the ability, or just rather the effect that summons from deck, obviously not the effect that reveals to discard the draw, because you just reveal again, but the ability that summons from deck is susceptible to Ash. And not only that, it's just kind of one of our more narrow extenders. And I just thought the disruption protection in the form of Crossout Designator was just far more important than having a couple more extenders. Now, that is actually still something we need to keep in mind, that we are playing less extenders, because that means that we have slightly fewer options to combo with, and it's going to be a little bit less likely for us to combo out on turn 1, but not so significantly so that yeah, we need the Jackalope, so that's why I was comfortable getting rid of those for the Crossout Designators. Still keeping the Tsuchinokos here, because it can be still summoned off of its own effect, or just whenever it's discarded by, like, say, like a Torn Scales or something. So yeah, definitely still good to have the Tsuchinokos in here. Other than that, the build hasn't changed. Extra deck is still the same. Rest of the main deck is still the same. Like I said, it was -2 Danger Jackalope, +2 Crossout Designator, and then for the 41st card, I just added the Nibiru. So, as always, let's go ahead and break down this list card by card, and then we'll jump into some games. So we've got 3 Maxx, 3 Tour Guide from the Underworld, 1 Graff, Malbrance of the Burning Abyss, 1 Seer, Malbrance of the Burning Abyss, 2 The Phantom Knights of Ancient Cloak, 3 The Phantom Knights of Silent Boots, 1 The Phantom Knights of Ragged Gloves, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Danger Tsuchinoko, 1 Psychic Wheeleder, 1 Psychic Tracker, 1 Phantom Knights of Stained Greaves, 2 Phantom Knights of Torn Scale, 1 Destiny Hero Celestial, 1 Artifact Scythe, 1 Destiny Hero Dasher, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Reinforced from the Army, 2 Fusion Destiny, 2 Emergency Teleport, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Crossout Designator, 1 Phantom Knight's Wing, 1 Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine, and then 2 Phantom Knights Fog Blade. Down here in the extra deck, we've got 1 Destiny Hero, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, 1 Levier the Sea Dragon, 2 Phantom Knights of Breaksword, 1 number 75 Bamboozling Gossip Shadow, 1 number 86 Heroic Champion Rangaminad, 1 Raider's Knight, 1 Arc Rebellion Xyz Dragon, 1 Divine Arsenal Azus Sky Thunder, 1 Cherubini Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss, 1 Artifact Dagda, 1 Predaplant Vert Anaconda, 1 Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardish. I don't know why I always forget that name. I always get Rusty Bardish and Shade Brigandine mixed up. 1 Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, and then finally, good old access code Talker. So, yep, that's about all I've got to say about the list so far. Just covered those minor differences, the kind of thought process behind them, went through the list. Yeah, we're looking good, so let us go ahead and go into the first replay. Okay, so this first game we're going to watch today is going to be against Prank Kids, which it's been a little bit since I've played with or against this deck. Prank Kids is another deck that I'm likely going to come back to before the end of the season here. I like to come back and touch upon that deck at least once in a while, especially with Adventures coming out soon. Best to stay refreshed on how that deck plays. This one too, although this one I have to do more research on. I haven't seen much in the way of like Adventure Phantom Knights as far as like research goes just yet. But anyway, so yeah, we're gonna start with Rhoda for the Torn Scales. You know, we've got the Wing and the Stained Greaves, and a Seer kind of can maybe be useful in this line. So we're gonna Rhoda for the Torn Scales. The idea here is that we're probably gonna go ahead and discard the Wing in order to set up our play here. They do have the Maxx, which is a bit unfortunate. That doesn't stop us from certainly using the Torn Scales effect. I'm just going to go ahead and set up the Ancient Cloak in the graveyard, just to have it ready for next turn, just a search for whatever Phantom Knight card I might need in order to continue my plays. Plus with the Torn Scales, if that goes to grave here, that's going to be a really nice play as well, because I can banish, get the Surge, special the Torn Scales, and I can just kind of go from there. I'm fine ending here because our opponent's going to be 1 card down. They're not going to get the draw off the Maxx, and we've got our own Maxx for disruption and more advantage as well. So given that that's the case, I'm pretty fine just ending off with just the Torn Scales in attack mode. I'm reasonably confident that I'm probably not going to lose as a result of that. So, I mean, I say reasonably confident, but our opponent could always just have the Ash or the Call By or the Crossout Designator, but you know, if they have it, they have it. If they don't, they don't. That's in these kind of scenarios, it just kind of comes down to that sometimes. So I'm just going to go ahead and summon Dropsies. I'm immediately going to Maxx in response to that, because I know that if they normal summon a Dropsies, and they're just going to go into Meow Meow Moo next, which does end up being exactly what they do here. We get the Ash Blossom right off the top, which is a really lucky draw on our part, because I'm just going to go ahead and use that right now. Our opponent does have the Call By though. Very interesting that they allowed the Maxx to resolve, but not the Ash. So, I feel like I definitely would have called by the Maxx. Now, it's really easy for me to say that because I know that I drew the Ash, you know, off the C. So, of course, I know that it was right to call by the C every single time here. I actually kind of want to take a segue to talk about this for a second. Because sometimes I see, occasionally, not very often, but occasionally I'll see people say like, well, given that this was the scenario and how it played out, it was right to do this. But I don't think that's a very helpful way to evaluate play, because when we're actually in the moment and having to make the decision, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. Saying that the result was this, so as a result, I don't mean to sound confusing there. The outcome was this, so as a result, the right play was this. That is called results-oriented thinking, and I don't think it's very conducive to having a good in-the-moment mindset when you're playing the game, because, you know, in the moment, you don't know what the end result is going to be, so you can't, you know, rely on results-oriented thinking. You have to just kind of figure, like, okay, in a vacuum, what's the most likely, you know, thing to mess me up, or what's most likely going to happen here. So I think in my opponent's scenario, they were more looking for the Ash as opposed to the C to hit with a Call By, because they can still make plays under C, I just get draws. But if I Ash there and they don't have the Call By, then they just are stopped. So in that regard, I do see, understand, and even respect what my opponent is doing here. It's, yeah, again, I probably would have just fired off the Call By against the Maxx, even not knowing that I drew the Ash here. But again, I don't necessarily think it's wrong for my opponent to do it the way they do it as well. So we do end up drawing the Nibiru. This is why I always like to say, if you're playing through Maxx, you should probably be playing a Nibiru as well. So that way you're in scenarios like this where your opponent just goes for it, they don't just, you know, automatically win as a result. Drawing all the cards in the world isn't going to do a thing for you if you don't have an actual threat somewhere in there to draw into. So definitely also a good case for just adding Nibiru, because again, we weren't playing Nibiru at all in this build before I added as the 41st card, since adding DPE and the artifact stuff. And it really it genuinely did make me a bit uncomfortable. I just really like having a copy of Nibiru in most decks if we can fit it. So that's part of the reason as well as wanting to make room for it as a 41st card, in addition to using it as a target for a Crossout Designator. So now we can go into our more standard combo lines. We've got our 2 level 3 monsters, so we can go into Cherubini. We've already got the Seer in play. By summoning it to a zone that Cherubini points to, it does not get destroyed, even though we have Nibiru on the field. So now we can go into our Rusty Bardish, and that's kind of where things really get going. We'll send a Torn Scales. I think, did I already have a Torn Scales in Grave? I don't think I actually needed to send that. So, but I didn't actually need to send anything because I already had the Ragged Gloves, the Cloak, and the boots. I already had everything in Grave, so Graveyard's fully set up. Didn't even really need the send part of the effect, just need to set the Shade Branding here. So I decided to go for the Gossip Shadow here first, just in case. Yep, they do have the Nibiru, which they did end up having. So normally, you know, when I'm doing it turn 1 and I'm not getting interrupted for the plays there, you know, I'll do I'll summon the 3s, then the 4s, then make the Shadow, then make the Rongo. But yeah, like I said, here I wanted to summon the Shadow out first before I attempted to go into the Rongo, just in case they had Nibiru, because I actually wasn't at the summon limit for, like, threshold for Nibiru just yet. And sure enough, now we are able to negate the Nibiru, so we don't have to worry about getting hit with that. And now this makes me even more reasonably confident that I can just go for lethal without any real issues here. So, gonna go for my, oh, you know what? That's funny, actually. I forgot about this. So you might be seeing, like, what, Nightmare Unicorn? That wasn't in your deck profile. I forgot about this. Yeah, when I was tweaking with the extra deck, I had an extra slot, so I was like, yeah, I'll throw a Nightmare Unicorn. Why not? It'll be a good target for access code to make those plays a little bit more accessible as an OTK. But in that play, when I went for those 2 level 4s, I was going to go for Raider's Knight, but then I looked at my extra deck and I realized I forgot to put Arc Rebellion back in. So after this game, the Nightmare Unicorn came out and the Arc Rebellion went in, but just want to make that clear there. You might be confused there, but didn't matter. We had lethal anyway, due to some nice plays and mostly Nibiru there. So all right, let's go ahead and look at the next game here. Alright, this game is going to be against a mirror match. This one is playing a Punk engine, though, this Phantom Knight deck, so definitely interesting. You know, I was looking at my opponent's build, just kind of looking it over, seeing what all they took out for the Punk build. I haven't really played with the Punk engine myself, so I can't speak too much for it. I think I tend to prefer some of the more, like, quote-unquote standard stuff I've got here. So this is yet another game where we're going to lead by getting Max Seed, but we've got the responses here. I'm going to call by here, but I actually definitely should have just Ash Blossomed. I'm pretty sure this actually comes up here in a second, if I remember right, too. This little misplay here. Or no, wait, was this the game? Hang on, I'm kind of confusing games here. Yeah, no, that's right. So this was the game where I actually needed to save the Ash Blossom, because that's right, because I had another game where I didn't need to use the Ash Blossom as level 3. I had Ash Blossom in Call By. I used Call By as a misplay against C. But here, I did actually specifically want to use Call By against the C because I had the Ash in hand. I figured I was going to end up using that as one of my level 3s to go into the Cherubini, so that's why I Call By instead of Ashing there. And sure enough, we have both the Graff and the Seer in our hand, awkwardly enough. So as a result, we're not going to actually be able to summon back the Cherubini with Seer's effect because there were no valid targets at the time that they went to the graveyard. So definitely a little bit unfortunate, but not the end of the world here. We're still able to make plenty of plays here. We're going to use the Rusty Bardish to go ahead and set up the Brigandine as well as the Cloak, getting the Stained Greaves. You see now the Torn Scales coming back. We're able to use that, discarding the Graff in order to set up the Wings, which you can then use to get back, it looks like we're going to get back our Silent Boots here, and we're just going for a pretty standard Rongo setup here. I've done more than 5 summons at this point, so I know I'm not in real danger of getting Nibiru, so I'll just go ahead and summon out all my materials. I mean, ideally you should probably just go into Gossip Shadow before summoning your level 4 materials, but didn't really matter too much here. So, yep, going for a good old Rongo lock. So, yeah, I wanted to show that game off in particular, that hand, because, you know, you look at this opening hand and you're like, well, like, especially if you're referring to combo guides like the one I put out, you know, you look at this opening hand, you're like, well, that's not really a hand that can really make a Rongo, right? Don't you like Tour Guide and Extender, or like Torn Scales and 2 Extenders? But like, you can often just backdoor into the Rongo itself. It's really not that hard to do more often than not. The way I like to think of it is like, you just gotta get 2 level 3s and 2 level 4s on the board, and for this deck, it's really not that big of a deal at all. So, yeah, just wanted to show a game like this, just to show again that, like, you know, you can get disrupted. We can get Maxx Seed, we can open awkward hands, we can have games where both happen, where you get a little bit disrupted and open an awkward opening hand, but we're still able to pull out a Rongo and from there pretty easily go for a win. So yeah, with this deck in particular, you know, this isn't one of those decks where if you don't open a solid, you know, start, you can't combo. This is kind of one of those decks where sometimes I'll just make a combo and I'm like, don't even realize what I can go into until the halfway is already like, or the the combo's already halfway through. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game before I lose more of my words here. Next game we're looking at here is going to be against Drytron. That's right. I was gonna say I just saw it. I would hope I remembered something I looked at 10 seconds ago. Good old Drytron. Yep, always. Not gonna lie, always satisfying to get wins against them. So. This is another opening hand where, like, it looks pretty awkward, but we do have plays still. We're gonna summon a Boots, special a Boots. That's gonna let us go into our Cherubni. As always, if you've not seen any of the combo guides that I've put out for, or rather the combo guide that I put out for Phantom Knights, well, for one, it's actually gonna be linked in the description below, so you can go ahead and check it out there. And 2, you'll know that starting with Cherubni is pretty much always the way to go. Cherubni into Rusty Bardish is going to be the catalyst for more or less all of your combos. There are obviously plays that you can make that don't involve doing that, but turn 1 especially, it's pretty much almost exclusively just going to be that. So the double crossout's a little redundant, but we do at least have the crossout in order to be able to take care of that Ash there. I know we can go ahead and get back our Cherubni, but our opponent Maxx sees here, which is a little interesting to me. I feel like, weren't there just so many better opportunities to Maxx see earlier? Like, okay, I get when I normal summon the Silent Boots, maybe not missing the special summon there, but surely after I special the Boots, wouldn't you Maxx see? Because you know I'm about to either go into a rank 3 or a Link, but I suppose not. So here what I'm going to do, I don't want to play too much into Maxx C. I don't want to give them multiple draws. I've talked about this a lot before. That's generally, I'm a very risk-averse person, so turn 1, like, yeah, I probably could have ended up going into a Rongo, and if they hadn't drawn Nibiru, I could have done it just fine. But I'd already used my Crossout Designator for the turn, so I couldn't use the second one. And like I said, I just tend to be a more, like, risk-averse person, so decided to just set up the Fog Blade with the Rusty Bardish effect, and then just kind of end there. So looks like they got the Fafnir for the Nova. Gonna go into Nova here for the Thuban, and foolish to set up, I'm sure, yeah, the Altair, not even the Althaiba, the Altaeus rather, I should say. So at this point though, they revealed the Metatonus Drytron. I'm like, okay, so they've got Metatonus and 2 unknowns, but that's actually not that bad here. And in fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the Fog Blade against the Mu Beta Fafnir, which this is not normally what I consider to be a choke point for Drytrons. Well, I guess to be fair, also my experience playing as Drytrons is mostly from last format when they had Ben 10 at 3, so, and that was ridiculous. So, but yeah, I don't normally consider this one of the choke points for Drytrons, but this hand in particular, like I said, they revealed the Metatonus Drytron, and they only had one other unknown, as well as the card they drew off the Altaeus, which is another unknown. Given the kind of nature of the way they comboed before, I figured their first unknown probably wasn't going to beat anything live, so they really only have one volatile wild card here that could potentially get them into plays. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Fog Blade on the Beta Fafnir here, so that way they can't set up the last, I believe it is the Althaiba, is the last one they have to set up here. So, yeah, like I said, I'm just trying to get rid of that. Just get rid of their options there. Make sure they don't do anything too scary. They're gonna get the bent in here, but it is what it is. I'm not super worried about it. At this point, they go for a simple Nightingale. Looks like they're gonna try to set up a Zeus at this point. I said at this point like 3 different times in a row there, because there's not really a whole lot else they can honestly do right now, other than that. So here we see the Zeus coming out. They do have play set up for next turn as well, so we have to be mindful of those two. And then they set a card along with the Zeus to pass. So we've only got the Dangerous Tsuchinoko in our hand, but one, we top deck the Torn Scales, which is like, with the Tsuchinoko only being the only card in our hand, like one of the best top decks you can get. But I believe we also still had, didn't we have, yeah, we had an Ancient Cloak in Graveyard, as well as Silent Boots, so we still had play set up, even if we didn't just get really lucky and top deck the Torn Scales there. It would have been nice to send a Wings or a Fog Blade, but we've already got a Fog Blade in Graves, so not too fussed about my Torn Scales getting negated there. I'm going to go ahead and go into Breaksword here and use this to force the Zeus, because obviously, my opponent hasn't used it yet, and I can't really just start going into plays right off the bat with a live Zeus on board. So that does mean that we're not going to get to summon the Phantom Knights monsters with Breaksword's effect, but that's going to be just fine. Getting rid of the Zeus is definitely the more important thing to do there. So we get to bring back our Rusty Bardish, and then from there we can use its ability, sending the gloves in order to set up the Brigandine. Now we can go ahead and bring back the, or rather add a Silent Boots. I don't know why I said bring back. I thought we were going to bring back Ancient Cloak there for a second, but no, of course we're using the Banish to Surge effect. But now we get to bring it back with Levier the Sea Dragon. And that's going to be where opponent concedes, as they realize that we still got the Shade Brigandine face down. Like, basically my goal was to just set up a no TK with Access Code Talker and the Rusty Bardish there. Which I was on my way to doing, but like I said, our opponent just decided to give us the win before that. So cool. All right, let's go ahead and look at the next game. So this opponent is going to be named Rage Quit Babe, which I did think was funny. That's all I kind of saw what deck they were playing. I think this might be a bot because it's an FTK deck, but they also, I remember during the game, seemed like they were playing kind of humanly, so I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Who knows? But we're going to take the first turn here. I don't really have any other plays besides just the Fusion Destiny here, but hey, I guess it is a good thing that we have the Fusion Destiny all set up there, in case we have kind of questionable hands, although that does specifically require a questionable hand with Fusion Destiny, but you know what I mean at this point, so. Yeah, but the activated Summon Resort, my first thought was Clifford's, because that's, when I think of Summon Resort, that's always, yeah, because I played Clifford's, that's the first deck I think of, but no, it turns out to be Ignites. And again, I wondered if this was a bot, because again, they seemed like they were playing kind of humanly in the moment. Obviously, this is a replay where everything is at an automated pace, so you're not going to get that inferred here, but I don't know, I never did really figure out if I confirmed whether or not it was a bot, so. Yeah, at this point, I've got the Nibiru, I've got the Crossout and the Callby, but most importantly, I've got the Nibiru, so I'm more or less just kind of waiting for my opponent to hit a point where they, you know, search a crucial card or kind of like peter out in their combo a little bit. But as the Ice Hold comes down, you know, it's clearly the case that that's not going to stop, so. Looks like they did end up having another scale here. This one they can actually Pendulum Summon with. Okay, I'm getting those out in defense mode. And then, yeah, as soon as I saw this mouse come out, I was like, okay, now I'm getting Nibiru. Because if we're actually counting the summons, I was able to Nibiru for quite a while. And actually, I kind of want to talk about this because I've alluded to it before, but so I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with this little button that exists down here where you can toggle auto off and on. That'll, you know, alert the game to when you want to respond to prompts, either at the game's choosing, at your choosing, or just not at all. So sometimes what I'll do is if I have a Nibiru, because normally I just leave myself on auto if I'm not really thinking about the game in general, but I wanted the Nibiru to be a surprise here, because I didn't want my opponent to see a prompt to suddenly activate an effect, you know, 5 summons in and then know that it's a Nibiru. So yeah, I flipped the thing to off, and then at this point I went ahead and Nibiru'd to kind of lull them into a false sense of security. Definitely good to do it now that they've already used their Pendulum Summon as well. And I believe they used their normal summon earlier, if I recall correctly. I don't remember exactly for sure, but yeah, it looks like they did because they don't make any further plays here. And then they just go ahead and concede, which funnily enough, I definitely still needed to top deck the answer there. That kind of makes me think it might have been a bot, but I also feel like a bot wouldn't have played quite that long, so who knows at this point. Yeah, okay, so we've got one more game to look at. Let's go ahead and do that, and yeah, jump right into it. All right, so this one I just had to show because it was a solid enough game, and then when I looked back at the to confirm my opponent's deck, they were actually definitely just practicing for the Highlander tournament, or not the Highlander tournament, for the Limit 1 festival. So my opponent's playing like a Highlander deck right now, which I thought was kind of cool. So they're gonna take the first turn. That definitely explains weird stuff like this Upstart Goblin, which I in game was like, oh, that's a little odd. Using Egypt Scissors here as well, which is like not an awful target for Tour Guide, but obviously we have much better ones in this deck. So yep, getting out the Cherubini, setting up the Graff, looks like. Yep, sending the Ancient Cloak. We get to link those away for good old Rusty Bardish, or whether we don't, our opponent does. And interestingly enough, they set up the Fog Blade and not the Shade Brigandine here, so I'm kind of thinking, like, okay, did they already have the Brigandine in hand, or are they going for something more disruptive? Like, I wonder, yeah, I just wondered what was going on here, so. They do end up going for, looks like, a Link 3 here. Ah, of course, good old Levier. Good old Levier. Bringing back that Cloak and a buff the Bardish, set a couple of cards, and then pass. Okay. Alright, we've got the Torn Scales here. I'm going to get rid of one of my call buys because with only one card in my opponent's hand, I really don't foresee needing both of them during this turn. And I would like to save my Graff as a potential material to summon. But yeah, you know, unfortunately with the Torn Scales getting negated, we don't have any kind of effect in our own graveyard in order to set up another summon there. So I'm going to have to set the Shade Brigandine here and then go for, you know, the artifact here instead of the Titanic. The Titanic? Did I just say Titanic? Oh man, I'm a little out of it, honestly. Why did I say Titanic? Because I did think of the ship when I said that. Yeah, not gonna lie, I'm a little out of it right now. It's a little late for me, and this is one of the last videos I'm recording for the day. So, Titanic. Where was it? I haven't even thought about that movie recently, so I have no idea where that's coming from. But yeah, the other point I was meaning to make there was even though we're able to get the Dagda and DPE set up, that you know we still had to wait for our opponent to actually activate an effect. To get the Scythe set, because you know Dagda can only activate when a card or effect that is already on the field is activating. That's the only way that we can get Scythe set up there. But it just sucks with. Oops, sorry about the bump the desk there. It just sucks with the Break Sword in particular, because then obviously our DP is negated, and setting up the Scythe doesn't really do anything because we can't pop it during our opponent's turn to keep them from summoning from the extra deck. And given that that's the case and we don't really have any hand traps in hand, it's yeah, it's looking not too great for us here. But still just funny that I played this game out and I didn't even register to me that this could be a Highlander deck, right? Or a Limit 1, however you want to say it. You all know what I mean, for the new festival. I didn't even occur to me that like it could be the case here. But then, like I said, I went and confirmed my opponent's deck after the fact, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Alright, I'm going to show this game. Even though I did end up losing it here. As you can see, my opponent is going to end up smacking me for... Oh, not quite lethal. They do leave me... Oh, no. Sorry, I thought they were going to leave me at 100 and I had a chance to come back. But then, yeah, I forgot about the Fog Blade for the gloves here. Is going to seal the deal. So, GG's to our opponent there. And you know what? If it's a Phantom Knight gameplay video, I'm also fine showing a loss if it's against against the mirror match there. So, alright. That's about all we've got for this video. Let's go ahead and move now to the outro. Okay, everybody, as always, just want to give a thank you very much, a very sincere thank you to those of you who have watched all the way to the very end of the video like this. That helps out the channel immensely, so thank you for doing that. Other things that you can do to help out the channel are to comment and subscribe. Comments are helpful, not even in just a, like, viewer engagement sense. Well, yeah, in a viewer engagement sense, but not just, like, I'm not just like asking for viewer engagement here just to have it. Like, I love getting your guys' feedback on decks, on gameplay, just in general. Particularly here with Phantom Knights being at 41 cards, even though I am more willing to branch out of my comfort zone now, I do still very much like having 40 card builds. So if you have a suggestion of maybe a card to drop to get it down to 40, you know, I'd love to hear your thought process or your input on that. I'd even be willing, if possible at all, to get in, like I said, I want to get an Imperman to be able to negate that with Crossout Designator too. So, yeah, if you have suggestions in that regard, feel free to leave them. I would love to see those. And then, yeah, if you're subscribing, that is obviously, again, a great way to help out the channel, as well as the best way to stay informed of my new videos. I have new ones that come out every single day. We get a Master Duel video every day here over at HexLex, so make sure to sub if that's something you're into. But, I think that's going to do it for today's video. Without further ado, this is HexLex, signing out. Hope you guys have a fantastic day.